Okay, hello, welcome everyone, and welcome to Risktec's Accelerating IRM Implementation Success session. We're going to look into how to leverage quick start methodology for effective IRM software implementation. So I'm going to start by quickly running through the agenda. So what we'll cover, we're going to start by giving an introduction about Risktec. We'll then look at some market observations. We'll then go into common mistakes that we've seen organizations make when doing through their IRM journey, and we'll then provide some suggestions and recommendations. We will then look into Embark, so our latest offering that is designed to help organizations establish their key ServiceNow IRM use cases. And we'll then finish with a Q&A. So bear in mind, at the bottom of the screen, you have a Q&A section. So if you have any questions, if you can pop in your questions in there. Thank you.
Okay, so yeah, quick introductions. So good afternoon, everyone. My name's Tom Owls. I'm a GRC practice manager here at Risktec. So I've been with the company for about 7 years now. And I guess I'm responsible for the day-to-day operations of the ServiceNow practice. So still very much involved in projects from a technical standpoint, but also a GRC advisory standpoint. Thanks.
Okay,
Thanks.
Dev, on to you if you could introduce yourself.
Sure, thanks, Carolina. Hi, everyone. My name's Dev O'Nien, not Tom Owls. Apologies for the slight glitch on this webinar. I'm the commercial director at Risktec. I've been working in the governance, risk and compliance market for over 10 years and work with our team to kind of help mature various different types of businesses, integrated risk management or GRC programs of work.
Thank you, Dev. And me, I'm Carolina Bellato. I'm a GRC Associate Consultant, and I've been at Risktec for a year. I have proficiency in GRC tools such as ServiceNow, Archer, and LogicGate, and I'm aiming to specialize in IT risk management. So we wanted to start this session by asking this question to you. So what is the current status of IRM tooling within your organization or team? So if you could please select one of the options from below. So we have option A, no tool, Excel, or manual processes. Option B, tool licensed but underutilized. Option C, effective IRM tooling for subsets of processes. Option D, effective IRM tooling, which covers all current needs. And if you feel neither of the above, tailor your organization. If you could select other. Thank you. So I'll give it a couple of seconds for everyone to select their response.
So Carolina, whilst everyone is obviously responding to that poll, thank you very much for everyone that participated there. We can move on to just a quick overview of who Risktec are. Some of you might be aware, but might not have talked to our team specifically. So Risktec is a governance, risk and compliance implementation and advisory business. We were brought into the TV Rhineland Group about 7 or 8 years ago. We have worked with many different organizations across the world, heavily in financial due to the regulatory burden they are under, but ultimately we've worked in oil and gas, nuclear, banking and professional services, and covered the wide range of governance, risk and compliance domains such as operational risk, business resiliency, third-party or supply chain risk, and more. It's a growing sector, and as various technologies mature, we expand our offerings and managed services. So I think you heard Carolina talk a little bit earlier about some of the technologies we support. So we've been around the industry for a very long time and have worked with various different technology platforms. Our largest partnership to date is ServiceNow. And today we will be talking to you about how to get the most out of your ServiceNow platform. So for those of you that aren't familiar with governance, risk, and compliance as a domain or subject, it covers a lot of activities that sit within kind of the business domain as well as IT domain, and a growing market which Risktec will be developing services and managed services within our operational technology. Often it's quite common to see multiple GRC technologies within organizations, so we can help customers navigate that kind of complex area of data silos, business processes, and knitting those kind of systems together. Some of you might be aware that ServiceNow is an IT service management tool, but it has become much, much wider than that. And due to expansion into risk management, we have been brought into that partner ecosystem to help customers understand how to get the most out of the platform. So what I'll do is pass over to my colleagues, Tom and Carolina, to get on with the rest of the webinar.
Super, thanks, Dev. So yeah, I mean, as Dev outlined, we've helped countless organizations on their GRC journey. Many of those will be onboarding a new software for the first time. Some will just be moving from one to another. So in the presentation today, I'm going to talk about really what we've observed in the market, the mistakes that we see companies repeatedly making, and I guess our kind of tailored approach that we would suggest to these companies instead. And really, I hope by listening that you'll learn from these mistakes, and potentially if you're looking to onboard or migrate a software over the kind of short or medium term, you might reconsider your approach slightly or learn from what we've said today. So the story usually begins when an organization realizes they need to onboard a GRC or IRM solution. And I'm going to use GRC and IRM interchangeably here, really. And the reason for that can be various things. It might be a regulatory push or mandate. It might be the realization that moving from kind of Excel and manual processes, there's loads of efficiency gains to be had by onboarding the GRC tool, or it might even be something like a new CISO who's trying to digitize the business. But whatever the need be, the need arises for a GRC tool. So the first challenge, I guess, is determining which GRC tool to choose. I mean, that's becoming quite an increasingly difficult challenge because the market's flooded with competent tools, all that will promise that they can solve all of your problems. At Risktec, we tend to take a vendor agnostic approach. So we work with some of the leading vendors in the market. And the idea is really that a customer can approach us, we can have a conversation around what they're looking for, evaluate their individual and specific needs, and then suggest the most appropriate tool for that customer at that point in time. Now, one of the most capable or strongest contenders in the market that we see is ServiceNow. And some of you might be familiar with the platform. It's got capabilities way beyond IRM and GRC. But based on the time we have today, I'm not really going to go into why I think it is the strongest player. We're just going to talk about a company that does implement ServiceNow. Obviously, if you are interested in ServiceNow for the IRM use cases, or you do want to discuss it, you would like a demo, then reach out. It's something we can absolutely arrange. But yeah, for the time being, let's just assume this company wants to onboard ServiceNow for one reason or another. And I mean, for hypothetical sake, let's say it's because they've already got ServiceNow for ITSM, their CMDB management, and maybe HR. So it just makes logical sense for them from a kind of licensing perspective or a data sharing capability that they just leverage the same solution for IRM rather than onboarding a point solution. And that's really what we're observing in the market, and it seems to be one of the core reasons ServiceNow is starting to dominate the industry. So the company's decided they want to onboard ServiceNow, and I guess onwards with the implementation journey. So it's turning that idea into a reality. Obviously, deciding on the software is challenge number one, but deciding on how to implement it and who you work with to support you on that journey are next. What we'd recommend really is before that implementation begins is taking a step back and thinking, I guess, or reflecting on what success will look like for you. What would a successful project look like in the end? And then starting to think about the key success factors that will determine that. Because what we're observing is time and time again that some of our customers are completely underestimating the significance of some of these success factors. And really that's what we're going to talk about today. I mean, I list some key success factors here, and then we'll go through and actually talk about what we're observing in the market. So I won't go into the weeds on this slide, but I will just work around the wheel slightly. So we have timelines. Obviously, timelines are important. We're seeing a lot of clients trying to achieve a huge amount in a small space of time, which is possible, absolutely possible, but often just seems unnecessary with lack of foresight. We have implementation partner. I mean, obviously, I am an implementation partner, so I might be slightly biased, but I think this is an essential and really, really important success factor. It's who you'll be working with day in, day out from the get-go. And to be honest, if it's a successful relationship, it shouldn't just be for this project. It's a long-term engagement, right? I think some customers fall short of thinking, right, we need to implement one project and that's GRC. It's not. It's a long-term journey where you hopefully increase your maturity and increase your efficiency throughout time, right? We have project management, project methodology. I mean, we're tending to lean towards agile for ServiceNow and getting the most success from agile methodologies. Budget, environment customization, ServiceNow architecture, data migration strategy. So, there needs to be a full strategy around that. So many companies leave that till the end. End user training and enablement, essential, really, really important. We find a lot of, I mean, to be honest, you can design and implement the best solution in the world, but if your end users don't know how to use it or aren't bought in, it's almost pointless. So we really, really do stress this piece, and we'll come to that in a second. And then we have roadmap. Hopefully that's something you'll be working on with your implementation partner. So obviously there's more to this, but I just thought I'd kind of give you some food for thought before we dive into what we're observing. And before we do that, we actually have time for our second and final poll. So over to you, Carolina.
Thank you, Tom. Okay, so over to our second question. So, in your opinion, what is the biggest barrier to achieving a successful IRM software implementation? So, again, if you could please select one of the choices from below. So, A, lack of clear objectives and strategy. B, resistance to change, so employees and stakeholders. C, insufficient training and support. D, poor integration with existing systems. Then we have complexity of the software, F, outdated or incorrect data, and G, unclear roles and responsibilities. I'll just give it a couple of seconds for everyone to answer. Okay, so we can see that 75% of respondents responded lack of clear objectives and strategy. So keep this question in mind, as now Tom will go through some of the common mistakes we've seen organizations making in their IRM or GRC journeys.
Super. Yeah, exactly that. So I'll talk through some of those implementation factors, I guess what we're observing our customers or clients the mistakes they're trying to make, and I guess what we would instead suggest. I guess it's worth noting, obviously, every project is unique, and in some instances, one approach will work more favorably than another. So I guess what I'm saying is reasonably generalized, and I guess it's kind of focused on lower to medium maturity customers. So potentially somebody that's looking to onboard ServiceNow for the first time. Maybe they're trying to expand into a new use case, or maybe they're moving from a relatively immature platform and into ServiceNow. Obviously, there are instances where there are bigger, larger, more complex projects where some of what I mentioned maybe is less relevant. So first implementation mistake, and particularly for ServiceNow and ServiceNow IRM, is the choice of implementation partner. I mean, we mentioned it before, it is a really, really important decision because it's who you'll be working with day in, day out. And obviously the decisions you make with them will have knock-on impacts for years to come. And for ServiceNow IRM in particular, what's been noticed is that a lot of the ServiceNow IRM projects are being implemented by partners that don't actually have any specialist IRM knowledge. And this is something that's been picked up by Forrester. So it's, they recognize ServiceNow as a really capable platform, but what they're actually saying is for the third consecutive evaluation that they've taken, reference customers are unsatisfied with implementation partners, especially on implementation speed, cost, complexity, and lack of partner domain expertise. And the reason for this is fairly obvious. I mean, usually a company doesn't onboard ServiceNow IRM as their first engagement with ServiceNow. They'll typically have engaged with ServiceNow for ITSM or CMDB management, for example. And then because they're already there, they'll then decide IRM. And what typically happens is if they've had a partner for ITSM and they've had success with that, if that partner says they can integrate with IRM, then they typically choose that partner as well. But what we'd instead suggest, obviously for in IRM specialist knowledge, actually going back out to market and treating IRM separately for ServiceNow. Next, we have project scope, and this aligns with, I guess, the most common vote in the last poll. Really, I guess the project scope sets up what you're trying to achieve in the implementation. So it absolutely has a huge influence on the success of the project, I guess. And the mistake that we are often observing is that actually sometimes clients are trying to achieve a huge amount in a really short space of time. Obviously, if you're a large, mature bank and you've got refined processes and they've all been successfully adopted within the organization, if you're coming to migrate tool sets, it makes sense trying to replicate the processes that you've spent years refining and working on. But what we're often seeing is small, immature firms that are maybe using something like PDFs and email for policy management. They might have an immature risk register in Excel. They might have only just started to map and assess controls. They're trying to go from 0 to 100 overnight, and they're sometimes looking and willing to spend kind of lots of time and money changing and manipulating the best practice solution to align with what they've previously got in Excel, even though they've recognized themselves that what they've got in Excel is subpar. So I guess what we'd suggest instead here is to actually take a step back, work with your implementation partner on some sort of roadmap, and think of the first project as step one on the staircase, really. So start small, pick a use case, or I guess a small collection of use cases, because there can be efficiencies in implementing several together. Implement them, adopt them, learn the platform and the processes, and then reflect on what you actually want. So our recommendation really is for a less mature customer, if they're considering completely ripping up out of the box and customizing it from the get-go, instead is to just go live with a use case, use it for a couple of months, reflect on it, and then decide if you want the changes. Because we're finding really that the customers that wanted to change the most at the beginning, if they've actually used the platform for several months, start to realize why out of the box is designed a particular way, and are more than happy to actually align with it. After this, we have timeline. To be honest, I think we're finding the greatest success in the right instances with a focused, quick start methodology. So kind of rapid deployment in which we're really aiming to go live within kind of 8 to 10 weeks of project kickoff, which sounds short, but it's easy to do. I mean, all we need is a kind of key and focused group of stakeholders. They don't necessarily need to give up their day jobs, but they just need to be willing and able to, I guess, learn the software and input into design sessions. And again, following go live, they use it for several months, and then we evaluate if we really need to make significant changes. But really, kind of a small manageable project equates to a small manageable timeline, and is much more likely to be successful in our eyes. Project managers. Some customers are very adamant that they want external project managers, and for a large project, I'd be inclined to agree. I think when it's a focused implementation like this, actually there's huge efficiencies to be made in just having the lead consultant or lead solution consultant wearing the project manager's hat as well. Obviously, the solution consultant's in the middle of everything. They're speaking to everybody. They know exactly what's going on, so they have all the information they need. There's an external project manager who maybe doesn't know ServiceNow so well. There's just a communication that has to happen, and the project manager can only make decisions based on what they've heard, which sometimes isn't everything. So we tend to have most success with having the solution consultant wear that project manager's hat as well. And obviously that increases efficiency, which can bring down costs and time inputs too. Customizations, I mean, I mentioned it very briefly before. We find some customers really trying to rip up the out-of-the-box best practice from the get-go. And it kind of shocks me when they actually haven't had a chance to even learn or understand how it works. ServiceNow is brilliant because the way it comes out of the box is to be tailored to the organization. You set it up. It's not just a take it, here it is. There is flexibility in the out-of-the-box offering. So heavy customizations, we really try and push back against. And particularly with ServiceNow, right, the roadmap is quite aggressive. So there's new and useful functionality coming out all the time. And if you can stay with out of the box, you get all of the upgrades, you stay current with them. And obviously, I guess that's part of what you're paying for. If you heavily customize the solution, you have to maintain those customizations forever onwards, really. So yeah, it comes back to that. Go live with a kind of almost a POC, use it, and then decide if you need those heavy customizations. Next, we have data migrations. And this is the one that we think time and time again, I mean, it's always the case, customers underestimate the time that's needed for this. I mean, the data, due to the nature of the platforms, I guess the data being loaded is varied. It's not just owned by one person. It will be owned by different teams, different departments. So often, if we are going to manipulate it or make slight changes, we do need sign off from the respective data owners. And that's always a slow process. It's never fast. Even if you're coming from another platform, you expect the data from one platform to be standardized. So you think it'll be a simple export import, but often there are a couple of tweaks we need. And obviously we're not the data owners, so we can't just make those tweaks. We do need engagement and sign off from everybody. So yeah, a full data migration strategy is essential, and 2 weeks at the end of the project won't be sufficient. We tend to have most success with kind of a handheld approach. So we're really involved from the get-go. It's not just give the client or give the customer data import templates and guidance. It's really being involved throughout the full process. And then for some of the larger projects, we do have partnerships with companies like Precision Bridge, where we can look to kind of automate data migration if volume becomes quite extensive. And then final one here is just around training. Again, this is similar to data migration. I think it's an area where customers potentially try and save a bit of money. They just add a bit of training on at the end. It might be a couple of workshops, 2 times 1 hour sessions, where people should tune in. And to be honest, you find they might be checking their emails in the background. We don't really think that cuts it. We really recommend that training is included from the get-go, and to be honest, if possible, even before the project begins. So with a platform like ServiceNow, that's really easy because they have a Now Learning, a kind of university style website where customers can log on and there's all the training that they would need. So hopefully they can get started on that. But when the project starts, we start with training, right? We'll teach those that are making decisions on how to manipulate or change that use case. They should understand how the use case works before they're making those decisions. So there's training throughout, and then obviously for the end users, once we've finished everything, a really varied approach is essential. We think obviously people learn in different ways. Somebody might want to read a document by themselves. Somebody else might want you to sit down next to them and answer all their questions, and someone else might want to watch a video. So yeah, a varied approach to cater for all the different learning styles tends to be the most, or tends to be our recommendation, I guess. So obviously we have loads more to talk about, but a little bit limited on time today. If you are interested, we can follow up on this. But kind of reflecting on some of the mistakes that we've seen, we've actually come up, I guess, based on our observations, to align with, I guess, what we're saying today, a new offering called Embark. And the name stems from the idea really that the offering helps companies embark on their journey with ServiceNow IRM. So really it's aimed at the kind of lower to medium maturity companies, and it's essentially a collection of comprehensive fixed price packages that should deliver everything we need based on what we've observed to help you get up and running with any of the key ServiceNow IRM use cases in about 8 to 10 weeks. So we've evaluated each of the use cases. Some of them aren't particularly well suited for it, but we've at the moment got an offering for risk management, BCM, policy and compliance, TPRM, and audit management. And they're quite comprehensive. They include most of the things I've just talked about today. I won't go through everything now, but it's of course setting up the use case. There's all the training. There's some GRC advisory in there, data manipulation and import. Obviously, we talked about not heavily customizing the environment, but we do want to tailor it somewhat to align with your processes and procedures, etc. So there is some customization in there. There's post-implementation check-in sessions, and there's strategic roadmap sessions. Obviously, Embark is the first kind of embark into ServiceNow. It's a journey. We'd expect there to be engagements following on from this. So commercials are very, very competitive. Depends really on the use case, but a base 10-week implementation for some of the cheaper use cases starts at 45K, and there's a little bit of scope to go up there on some of the others. And obviously, this is a flexible shell. It's not a take it black and white. It's we do have the option to add on a T&M basis some other, I guess what we've called bolt-ons. So, if you do decide that you need additional data manipulation, some additional training, or maybe some additional development time, you can absolutely just bolt that on at the end very simply. So if you are interested in that, please reach out to us. All of our emails will be shared after, and we can send you a 2-pager or perhaps have a call to discuss it in a little bit.